for essentials, studying the absolute essentials, Ascent to Felicity in Shafi'i Fiqh, Al-Risala Al-Jami'a, and perhaps one other text gives you grounding in the essentials. In terms of understanding, one studies at least, sort of basic understanding is studying one complete book in all the chapters of fiqh properly, right? And that amount is really practically required for any Muslim. If you're serious about your religion and you haven't studied one text of fiqh cover to cover, like across all the chapters of fiqh, then you're just dazed and confused. And because if you don't know what Allah has made His servants obligated with respect to, then how can you know whether you're in a state of obedience to Allah or not? Right? And so studying that's sort of basic understanding of religion, of the practice of religion, requires studying a complete work of fiqh, cover to cover, or the equivalent thereof, right? In many lands, the ulama gathered sort of comprehensive works on practical guidance of religion related to the various facets of one's life that affect the common person. But in terms of formal study, one studies a matan, right? A primer that covers all the various chapters of life. So not just worship, but also personal law, marriage, divorce, and related matters, commercial transactions, contracts, and the various derivatives. And these are needed by anybody. And it's not just in terms of preserving guidance, but also in terms of, a lot of people miss out on obvious opportunities in life because they don't know what the limits are. So they err on the side of caution. Fascinatingly, a manual for women living in, semi-educated women or almost uneducated women in the beginning of the 20th century has detailed guide on how to have partnership contracts, how to invest, etc. Why? Because any rational human being, although how few they are, if you're a stay-at-home mother, if you're a rational human being, you'd consider the reality that your husband might die, or something could happen. So what are you going to do then? You should have some kind of way of having, your own economic well-being. So you'd secure that. One is either to enter into an agreement with your husband so that you have a share of his wealth, and if that's enough, but you'd think about, your worldly interests and securing them as part of securing your ultimate interests. So those chapters of fiqh aren't, and even other matters on public law. Public law, say, well, I'm never going to be a qadi. But the public law establishes principles of justice. Right? How you establish proof. And that applies in day-to-day relationships too. So someone comes and says something to you about somebody, but if you study the principles of public justice, of how a proof is established in court, how arguments are heard, etc., that applies to one's day-to-day life. Two people are in dispute, you know how to judge between them, you know how to arbitrate between them, and how to mediate between them. That's practically needed in families. And if you can be the person who can rectify, either through adjudication or arbitration or mediation, that you're a source of great good. And even just to judge on a personal level, someone comes and says something, there are principles of whose word do you accept, and what applies in court applies in daily living too. So these are all needed. the principles of international law, which is often called siyar, which are covered in the books of fiqh, establish questions that a lot of people have about jihad, about is Islam trying to take over the world, etc. And just say, no, it's not. Well, you'd be surprised, right? If you haven't studied it properly. So, but then to cover a commentary on a primer consolidates that understanding. So, the same in Shafi'i fiqh. If one studies Matn bi Shuja', then the commentary on Matn bi Shuja', which is Sharh ibn Qasim. If one studies Quduri, a Sharh on Quduri. This is consolidation of understanding.
La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.